Hi, everybody. Welcome to our February workshop of the monthly webinar, not webinar, monthly workshop series that I've been doing. Um, Hi, Lexi. Hi, Timothy. Hi, Roberta. Um, I am going to be teaching tonight about crowdfunding and crowdfunding. I call it Crowdfunding 101 because well, crowdfunding is not rocket science, but there are some very, very, very basic errors that people love to make, filmmakers love to make. So I think if we can just sort those out, that would be really nice. So I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Joanne Butcher. I am a business coach for filmmakers, and my whole goal in life is to get money in filmmakers' hands. And so I do that in a number of different ways. Most of all, I coach one on one, I work with clients one on one. And over the space of a few months, my goal is to turn my clients into excellent fundraisers. And we do that in a number of ways. We learn how to pitch really well, which I think is an incredibly important tool for a 21st century filmmaker. And we work on marketing materials and we work on fundraising. And there are lots and lots of different types of fundraising. And I was telling Lexi today, I met a filmmaker the other day who runs a disability rights nonprofit, and they make films. And he was telling me that they make all of their income from program fees. And I was like, wow, I don't even include program fees as one of my 7 types of fundraising that I'm going to teach next month. But that is a way that a lot of filmmakers actually not raise money for their projects necessarily, but earn a living. You know, if you're out there working as an editor, or you're working as a DP, or you're working as a PA, or whatever it is, in a way that's the same thing. So you're earning money for service. But today, I particularly want to talk about crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding is the best because why? Everybody can do it. You don't have to be sort of big time to be able to do it. You don't have to be famous to do it, although if you are, that could help. That could help you raise more money. Everybody can do it, and that's really what crowdfunding was designed for. It was originated by, I don't remember her name, but the woman who founded Indiegogo. That they were the first people who put crowdfunding together, and she particularly was looking to raise money for some musicians. And back then, I guess in the 80s, you you couldn't raise money for a charitable cause unless you were a non-profit 501c3. And a lot of people don't know this. I'm like a non-profit fundraising specialist, so this stuff is important to me. But we weren't actually allowed to do that. It wasn't legal to do it. And what's so amazing about Indiegogo and what it did was that it created crowdfunding as a way that individuals could give to individuals. They could give money to individuals, and the law had to change to catch up with it. So now it's all perfectly legal to do it, and everybody can do it, you know. But I think that a lot of people don't realize that crowdfunding is a great way for filmmakers to put money in their pockets, but it's also a great way to get visibility for your film. So whether you're raising $5,000 or whether you're raising $5 million, which some people do when they have famous names, they raise millions of dollars. Everything that you do in your crowdfunding work is actually getting visibility for your film. So it has a value that goes beyond the money that you're going to raise. So even if you raise a very small amount of money, it doesn't really matter how much you raise because you're still getting visibility for your film. Obviously, the more money you raise means the more people are looking at your campaign, and therefore the more visibility you're getting for your campaign. But it still is, excuse me, a great way to start with your marketing, you know. And just the same way as if you are writing grants, I always say to documentary filmmakers are the ones most likely to be writing grants. But if you're writing grants, just the writing of the grant is really helpful in working out your film. You end up with a better film as a result of writing the grant. Well, a, a crowdfunding campaign is the same thing, because whichever platform you use, it's set up in a very template kind of way. And so you have to fill in this little sentence, and then you have to fill in this little paragraph, and then you have to fill in this little essay, and it's all mapped out for you. So it gives you a lot of guidance about how to write about your film. It gives you a lot of guidance about how to write about yourself, and it gives you a lot of guidance about how to ask for money. So all of the crowdfunding platforms do that. They're all guiding you and using this kind of template version. And I think that for beginning on a film, it's great because you set up a crowdfunding campaign, and all of a sudden you basically have a website to send people to for your film. You don't have to go to the bother of building a website yet, or maybe you raise the money to build a website, So a crowdfunding campaign is a really nice way, I think, to get started. So it gives you your first chance at writing, it gives you your first chance at talking about your film. And a lot of times filmmakers will be, even my clients will be working with me. Like I had this one client one time and she said, "Oh, I'm having real difficulty with this video and I've got to make this video for the crowdfunding campaign." And I'm like, "But wait a minute, have you done the writing part yet?" And she said, "Well, no." And I'm like, "No, that's not the way you want to do it. You want to do all the writing, and then when you've finished all the writing, basically you will have written what you want to put in your video." And well, I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of ideas that are not necessarily what's out there, and one of them is about the crowdfunding video. Maybe I'll talk about that now. But a lot of times the reason that filmmakers don't start on their crowdfunding campaigns is because they say, "I don't have a film to show." And I always think that it's absolutely the wrong thing to do, to show a film in your crowdfunding campaign. I'm absolutely sure of that. And if you if you do a crowdfunding campaign on Seed and Spark, they will tell you that I'm absolutely wrong. But I have had clients with over 30 successful crowdfunding campaigns. So they can tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not. And so the video is really what I think that your crowdfunding video needs to be is you looking at the camera and sincerely pitching your film and asking people to support you and your film. That's it. So you can, put blur on your Zoom background and set it up and make a video. And that's all it needs to be. It needs to be basically you authentically asking for help on your project, and giving a nice summary of what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're working on, why you want people to join in, how you want them to help. And that's your crowdfunding video. So it's much, much, much less simple than most filmmakers are thinking, because most filmmakers think, I have to have something of my film to show in my crowdfunding video. And I do not do not agree with that at all. There have been a couple of examples where, no, but even then, I was going to say there are a couple of crowdfunding examples that I really like to direct people to, because they were done very, very, very well. One of them is, I'm not going to remember what it's called. The Does anybody? Oh, let's see. We'll do a crowd film naming moment here. Let's see who can name the film. All right, it was a very low budget horror film made by a woman, made in, I think, something like Iran or something like that. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Is that it? Lexi, can you IMDb and see if I'm right? I won my own competition. But the crowdfunding campaign for A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is really, really great. And it's got such fun elements to it. But there's still no film in the crowdfunding video. And you can all prove me wrong if that's not the case. But it's very, very cleverly done. Now, this crowdfunding campaign that was very successful, what I notice about that crowdfunding campaign is that the filmmakers who made it had already been in a lot of labs, if you know what labs are, filmmaker labs like Sundance Filmmaker Lab, or Biennale, or the one in Saudi Arabia, Dubai. Anyway, there's all these labs all over the world, and one of my clients just got into one, European Producers Lab, which was really great for her because she's a South African producer, so it was really great that she got into a European lab. But so this particular filmmaker was very, very, very sophisticated as a filmmaker. She had been around, she had really built up a big, big, big following. And but she has these super clever things when you look at her campaign. So I think one of the things was that they built this world for the town that the girl lives in. And one of the perks in the campaign was that you could get a street named after you on a map of the town, which I thought was very clever. And then the other crowdfunding campaign that I love to send people to is the crowdfunding campaign for The Last Black Man in San Francisco. And The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which was I'm always talking about it, was my favorite film of 2020. And I lived in San Francisco, and I got to know the filmmakers and became friends with them. And but the way that they did their crowdfunding campaign was that they did it not for the feature, they did it for their short. So they originally made a short of the film, and they made this crowdfunding campaign video for that short, and then they got that short into Sundance, and then at Sundance, and then also with their other connections that they had actually totally, this is one of my favorite film stories of all time. They were on the street one day. I don't think they had made Last Black Man in San Francisco. They were making shorts since they were kids. They were best friends since they were kids. They were making short films. And one day they see somebody on the street making films, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's another filmmaker on the street, you know. And does anybody know who it was, by the way? Does anybody know this story? It was Barry Jenkins. And it was Barry Jenkins making Medicine for Melancholy, which was Barry Jenkins' first film. And Barry Jenkins' first film, Medicine for Melancholy, that he made was $13,000, a feature film that he got into Sundance. And I suggest everybody go and watch that movie and ask yourself the question, how can I get a film into Sundance for $13,000? You know, what is it about that film that was so notable that it got into Sundance? Anyway, so the filmmakers for The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Joe Talbot and Jimmy Fails, were on the street one day, and they see this guy making a film, and they're like, oh my God, there's another filmmaker. And so they go and they introduce themselves, and it was Barry Jenkins, who was nobody at the time, completely nobody. and they he became really a mentor for them, and he helped them make their film. And he also was the one who introduced them to A24, that finally became the producer for The Last Black Man in San Francisco. But The Last Black Man in San Francisco, when they made their crowdfunding video, it's super cute, and I really recommend that you watch it. But the truth is, it's Joe and Jimmy talking to the camera asking for money. They happen to be on a skateboard, and they happen to be skateboarding along, um, which is a big image from the film if you've seen it. The two of them on a skateboard, but they're on a skateboard and they're talking to the camera. But that's really what it is. It's them talking to the camera. It's not them showing a film. So I just give you these examples to show you that really excellent filmmakers. This is how they do it. So so I suggest that you do the same. So that's a barrier that I see a lot with filmmakers. They think, oh, I've got to make this movie and then I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign, and that's backwards. You don't need to make your movie. You just have to have a camera, look in the camera, smile, maybe make a joke or two. That's always appealing. And tell us about the film. Tell us why you want our help, why you want the money, and what you're going to do. And that's really the video that you want to make. So what I would like to do this evening is start out by having you think a little bit about two different types of campaigns. So there's nothing different about these campaigns except that they're for two different amounts of money. One of them is for $12,000 and the other one is for $75,000. And I would like you to think about which one of those two you think right now you might be ready to do, ready to try for. I'm only giving you two choices, so it's not too much, too many. There's not too many choices. 12,000 or 75,000. Thank you, Alexandra. Who else would like to either say it or put it in the chat which one you're going to go for? 12,000, Timothy. Okay, great. Roberta, 75. Yes. Court. I don't know you, Court. So good. We've got Sal, Sai. I don't know. Sheena. Whoa, 75. Whoa. Anthony, 75. Shanice. Look, the 75s are winning. The 75s are winning. Okay. Anthony. Oh, now my client Anthony just wrote in $12,000 when he just raised 51. He said $12,000. Better to knock a modest goal out of the park than to disappoint by missing the larger one. You are a very wise man, Anthony. And oh, Timothy's gone for. Okay, so the $75,000 people are absolutely winning this competition here. But I do think that I do think that those two numbers would have to be run very, very differently. Very differently. So if we start out with the $12,000, could anybody tell me why they picked $12,000?
Initially, I picked it because that's who I knew in my close circle that I could raise. Like I know, like that number I could get. Like I can get, like literally just when if I put an ask out and the ask we're talking about, to my social circle of
Right.
people, that's a number I know I can pull together. 75 is a little more daunting, but I think it's doable. But I also like the thought I had and the reasons why I would spend on that. We can talk about that later, like what it would be for. But that's kind of why. Like literally, I thought to myself, 12,000, I could pull that, I can make that happen. And
Right.
then it'd be great to wildly shoot over that. So yeah, that'd be the
Yeah,
idea. And the idea is I would ask it to start the escrow account for my SAG money,
exactly. There you go.
right? And
That's a
honestly,
great, great reason to do it.
right. So obviously 75 is probably more of what I'm going to want to find for what we're talking about budget wise. But then honestly, that money, it goes into account. It's only there as a backup. One day it comes back to you. So do you, I don't know, who knows? The
That's why you were
possibilities open.
shilly-shallying.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
why you were shilly-shallying. Let's see what
Yeah,
Alexandra
yeah.
says. Thanks, Timothy. Alexandra, good to see you.
Hi. Well, this is only my second short. So that's why I picked 12,000. Also, you and I had talked before about some things, but I also picked 12,000 because 12 is a lucky number. I feel like 12 is a lucky number.
That's a good
Although
reason.
although I'd feel comfortable shooting for 15,000, going up by 3, but 12,000 gets me the money to pay people, pay my team, because I have a team already in place from my first short that I would love to work with again and be
Nice.
able to pay them. It will get me and my team to Los Angeles to shoot the short, because I have a whole bunch of people in Los
Where are you
Angeles that
based now?
I'm
Where?
based in Knoxville. I have a lot of
Oh, yes.
friends in LA who want
Right.
to be a part of my second shoot. So this will get me and my core team to Los Angeles to work with the people who really want to work with me because of the reputation I've built on Clubhouse.
Nice. Yes. And Alexandra told me also that she raised $1,000 before, and so one of the reasons that I like 12,000 is because when I work with my clients, my clients who make their first short, we raise 11 or $12,000, and it's doable. It's doable. It's attainable. It's something that you can reach, and I call this building your fundraising muscle. So when you go to the gym, you don't start out by trying to, lift up 75 pounds. You start out by lifting up 10, you know, and then you build up and you build up, you get to 11, and then you build to 15 or whatever it is. But so building your fundraising muscle is one of the reasons that I like the idea of $12,000, especially if you, like Alexandra was saying, she's on her second short film. So the other thing is that we're really talking about where are we at in our careers and where are we at in building our network, you know? So for $12,000, it's basically, and I just don't understand why it works like this, but it takes 100 people to raise $10,000. And it's so ridiculously accurate. I've seen crowdfunding campaigns get $10,000 and they have 97 people, they have 99 people, they have 101 people. It's just crazy. I just don't know why it would be that way, but it is. And so um, the the finding that 100 people who are going to give is within most people's reach, unless maybe you are, you know, I don't know, a high school student or, something like that. But most people ultimately are going to know and be able to get that 100 people to actually give and to come to the table, and do that. So the the thing about $12,000 is that it's also I've had clients, like one client of mine. He would not do a crowdfunding campaign no matter what. I like all my clients to do crowdfunding campaigns, but he would not do a crowdfunding campaign. And he raised money. We raised money a different way. He made his film, finished the film, completed the film, and then he finally agreed to do a crowdfunding campaign for $6,000. $6,000, and he raised it in less than a week. And I was like, well, you know, I thought that, and I said, so what do you want to do now? You've made your goal. Do you want to increase your goal? Which, some of my clients do that. We go for a stretch goal. Or do you want to quit now? And he said, well, really, I really want to go on vacation and forget about it. And I said, okay. So he left it at his $6,000 and moved on, and just did it to, he knew that he was going to be doing a lot of marketing but himself on the film. And this was really the beginning for him. He started with writing out exactly what I was saying, writing out the materials, making the video. That was super hard for him. He's very, very shy. But the other thing about $12,000 is it's enough money to make a short, and as Alexandra said, pay everybody, and maybe even have some money for yourself. If you are working on a bigger project, it will give you some cash, as Timothy was saying. It'll give you some money to start something. The only thing with that to be careful about is if you are going to be making a feature and you're just going to raise $12,000 to kind of jumpstart that process, be careful that you're not offering to deliver people the final film. You can't do that in the perks if you're just raising that $12,000. Now I'm going to ask a little bit about the $75,000 team. Anthony Maxi Lawau, can you come on and speak? Are you available to speak?
Hi everyone. Yeah, happy to speak. How are y'all doing?
Anthony, you're throwing off my numbers because I threw out the 75,000 one, but you did raise 51,000. But I notice here you're the one being very cautious. And can you talk a little bit about that? Why you're being cautious about the 75,000?
So I'm being cautious probably a little bit more from my own personal experience and where I was when I attempted this. I'm glad to say that, as Joanne mentioned, we knocked it out of the park. We got our $52,000, but it was through the generosity of a handful of people. And even though I went on and did almost 24 podcasts, for example, so tried to get the project out there, try to spread the word on social media and so on. Ultimately, of all the people who donated to the campaign, 90 to 95% were personal friends. So my attempts to get in money donations from a wider audience were not successful. And the reason why I made that much money is because I have a lot of friends who work in tech, and they were able to dramatically increase the average donation. So the average donation was closer to $200. No, actually it was $500 because I only had 100 donations. But most people donated 100 or 250, a few 500, and then a handful of people donated $5,000 or $10,000. So I got really, really lucky, and thank you. I worked my butt off. And Joanne helped me, calling people, encouraged me to call people. So I had my list of people to call together all ready to go. So I was prepared, and for that I'm incredibly thankful. But I think in retrospect, I probably would have gone for more modest goal and then been able to brag. Shit, I doubled my goal.
But you were very confident at the beginning, and then the thing that I most admire about you is that you realized, oh my God, this is harder than I thought.
Yeah.
And it did not deter you, and you did it, and that's really, really impressive. And can you tell everybody what you're doing with your $51,000?
Sure. So it came in just in time too, because with my budget, I've also discovered that my budget is closer to double what my original estimate was.
No, don't tell me that.
Because music is expensive, and the voiceover actors were double my
budget. Can you tell everybody a little bit about your film? Can you tell us about your film?
Sure. So Max Lawau tells the story of Simon, a shy young barista who finds a magic wig that turns him into the titular drag superhero Maxi Lawau. It's a coming of age story and about discovering who you are and revealing that the strength to be a superhero is inside all of us. So,
And it's a feature animation.
a feature animation with a lot of custom music. So, pushing the boundaries
And
for
a
musical
musical.
And as I mentioned, this money came in handy because it paid for phase 2 of our animation, which was like $30,000. I had a bill of $8,000 for a recording studio. So son of a gun, thank goodness it came through.
Wow. And now you have all of your dialogue recorded already,
Yes.
and all the music or not all the music?
I kick off the music hopefully by mid-March.
Okay.
But that's been a challenge finding a lawyer who really understood the music publishing industry and getting the contracts right and everything.
Yeah.
Music is
Yeah,
complicated. It's a comedy fantasy. Roberta asked, it's a comedy fantasy. A PG-13 kind of rating expected.
Yes. Very PG.
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you so much. It's always lovely to see you, and just love hearing, as you're moving along with the movie. So,
well, thank you so much for all of your guidance along the way and the recent inspiration to help with the comparables, getting our comparables in order.
Yes. It never stops. It never stops. So, okay, we're going to look at, so we were talking about 51,000, but we're going to talk about 75,000. So, everybody who's on team 75,000, can you share a little bit about how you would go about doing that? How would you go about finding your $75,000 goal for your crowdfunding campaign? Would anybody like to share a little bit about that? Like, no, that's why we're in this class. Who is brave and would like to share what they might do to get their 75,000? I'm going to pick on Sheena. Sheena, can you speak?
Yes, I'm able to.
What are you going to do to get your $75,000?
At first I was a hopeful and I thought about grants, but then I heard you mention that that's more
No, no, no,
so.
no, no. I'm only talking about crowdfunding.
Okay.
Tonight, next month you can come and we'll talk about grants. Tonight, I'm only talking about crowdfunding. Only talking about crowdfunding. Are you withdrawing from Team 75,000?
No, I still would
Oh,
want
oh,
to
you're
do the
still in. Okay. Yes,
75.
yes.
I
So, what
just
do you think you would do to reach that goal?
I just don't know what perks I would be able to offer because, of course, the goal is to not spend any more money to reward them. You want to keep as much money in-house. So now I would just be wondering of what kind of perks I would be able to give to them at the lowest expense possible.
That's very, very smart. Anybody else? Thank you, Sheena, for being brave. Being brave. Anybody else? How would you go about, Roberta? I want to know how you're going to go about getting to your $75,000 goal.
That's why I'm here to find out.
Are you going to find out? Okay. All right. I'm not going to torture you anymore. All right. So, um, the reason that I think most filmmakers are on the $75,000 team is because they're thinking, well, I need $75,000. And what I would say is that that is not the reason to pick $75,000 as your goal. The reason to pick a number as your goal is to really actually decide how much you can raise. And this is always, I think, the kind of disappointing thing that I feel as though my middle name is like cold water, because the disappointing thing that I'm always having to tell filmmakers is you're not going to be able to raise the amount you think you need. You're going to raise the amount that your network can provide. So if you notice that, to me, the very key things that Anthony said as he was talking, as he was sharing about his recent experience, is that he said, he was very lucky because he happened to, he's been working in Silicon Valley for a long time, and he happens to know a lot of people who are earning big salaries, and who were, and he's a very nice guy, so people wanted to support him, but he does have a network that is very well provided for, if that's the right term. So but what in fact, I just got a new client who, she had started her crowdfunding campaign before we started work together, and did exactly this. They picked $87,000. They were like, we need $87,000 to get our film made. And unfortunately, the campaign is not going to work at all, because it's not based on how much money she can make within her network. And so this, to me, is the number one thing that filmmakers have to realize. I don't pick, I gave you a choice. 12,000, 75,000. Most people picked 75,000, but my thing with that is that is always the mistake that filmmakers make. I get so many people who I talk to who tell me, I've already done a crowdfunding campaign. It was brutal. I didn't make any money. And they tell me all these horror stories that they were working 80 hours a week during the whole campaign and all this. And it didn't work. And this is usually the issue, the first issue, because the only thing I can say for my new client, the one with the $87,000 campaign, is that now that we're working together, we will raise that money, but she's not going to be trying to kill herself on this campaign. There's no point. It's not going to work. And, it's very interesting because nobody out there knows how much it costs to make films. You know how much it costs to make films. And yet the general public, somehow they look at a campaign and they know it's not going to work. How is that possible? How is that possible? But they always know. They always know that it's not going to work. And the only reason that is clear from day one is because filmmakers pick numbers that they cannot raise. Filmmakers pick numbers based on their idea of what they need and not based on what they can raise. And this is why I say, if you're a high school student, you can raise less money than by the time you get to college. And by the time you get to college, you can't raise as much money as you can after you've had a professional career and built a network over time, So your network, there's a cliche that I hear all the time. Your network is your net worth. And what that means is that your network is basically how much you can raise. So the first thing I want you to think about is decide what number you're going to raise in your crowdfunding campaign based on your network and not based on how much you need. And so if your network can, I really think that $11,000 or $12,000 for everybody here, for grown-up people, professional people, I think $11,000 or $12,000 you can all do. You can all do that. What I think is more questionable is going above that number. And I have clients who don't have long film careers, who've raised $20,000, $25,000, but it's starting to get a little bit wobbly once you start going up in those numbers. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is that most people think that crowdfunding is something that you do using social media. And I don't believe in that one little tiny bit. And that's why Anthony, again, when he said, I was behind him constantly, have you made your phone calls? My clients get really sick of me eventually, like, have you made your phone calls? Have you made your phone calls? Have you made your phone calls? Have you made all your phone calls yet? Have you called everybody back? So I don't believe in social media as being the way to run a crowdfunding campaign. And I have to say that there are people out there writing books about crowdfunding. There are people teaching crowdfunding. And nobody Nobody talks about this but me. And I really believe in this, that you are going to need to reach out to your network and actually call them and actually get them to give. So that is the second thing. Don't rely on social media. Social media is very useful because within your network, the average gift in a crowdfunding campaign is $50 to $75. So always make sure that you have $50 as one of your perks and $75 as one of your perks. Make sure always, because that's the most common amount, then 100. But a lot of people are going to give at, whatever your lowest amount is, and that could be $5, $10, $25, whatever your lowest amount is. There are always going to be people who are going to give with that, and you get those people through social media. But once when Anthony was saying he had people give 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, you better be sure that you're going to have to pick up the phone and call those people. You may have to have coffee with them. I don't mean to suggest this is going to be something awful. Probably they're going to be people you have a relationship with, that you would want to have coffee with, that you would want to have dinner with, that you would want to have lunch with. But there's going to have to be more to it if you're going to be getting a $10,000 gift from somebody, right? Does that make sense? If somebody's going to give you $10,000, it's not because you posted on social media, So what I'm really doing when I teach crowdfunding is I'm teaching, I think of small donors, let's say, 25, 50, 75 small donors. I think of crowdfunding as being an opportunity to switch into what in the fundraising world we call major donors. So next month, when I teach 7 types of fundraising, I separate individuals small donors and individuals large donors, because they're very different types of givers. They're very different types of approach that we, as the person asking, need to make to people. So, as I said, if somebody's going to give you $10 or $25 or whatever, that's fine. They can see a post on Facebook. They can see a post on Instagram, fine. But when you start to wander into major donor territory, there's going to have to be more interaction. So what I'm really doing when I'm teaching crowdfunding is I'm teaching you both small donor approach and major donor approach. And as I said, they're different. So that's why I don't believe in relying on social media, because I want my crowdfunding campaign where, people are going to be giving those smaller amounts, fine, but I want to use that as an opportunity to unearth my major donors. And so when Anthony was working on his campaign, he already knew who some of those larger donors were going to be. And one of the and then it's kind of like sales, you have to close the sale. If somebody's going to give you $5,000, you need to close that sale. It's not usually that, and it's never going to be that somebody's going to see a post on Facebook and give you $5,000. I'm sorry, but that's just not the case. So I think this is kind of the big secret in the crowdfunding world, that these large amounts are going to just show up because you post on social media. It's just not true. Some of my clients, so another thing, Anthony said, he was on all these podcasts and he did a fantastic job of getting on podcasts. And so he thought, I'm going to have all these people outside my network give. And that's not what happened. And so I think another huge error that filmmakers make is they think, I'm going to put my film up on social media and people are going to be so excited. All these strangers are going to come and give to the film. And I'm sorry, but that's not true either. That's just not true. So this idea that, I have filmmakers say to me things like, which one should I choose, Kickstarter or Indiegogo? Where are the most people? And I'm like, but it doesn't make any difference. It's your network that you're going to bring to the film. It's not the number of people on Indiegogo or the number of people on Kickstarter. It's the number of people in your network that's going to give to your campaign. But a lot of times filmmakers think, oh, strangers are going to come and give to my campaign. Now, some of my clients have had strangers give. And it's happened so many times that it's definitely a possibility, but it tends to be one stranger or two strangers. And they tend to have come in as major donors, and or they can be converted into major donors. And it has happened so many times that I think it's something that you can hope for, but I'm not sure how much you can try for it. And I'll give you the examples of the films. So one was a short film that dealt with racism. And this particular client is a very, very sophisticated filmmaker who was making this film. And she ended up getting a major donor who was a civil rights lawyer. And he ended up coming on, I think, for $15,000 towards her film. And really wants to build a relationship with her and work on her future films with her. He wants to get into filmmaking. He wants to be more involved in the whole thing. And he identified her as somebody who was very professional, doing beautiful work and making a film that was in line with his values. So that's very interesting because she basically unearthed a potential film producer, frankly, somebody who doesn't know about film. And I told her, and in our work together, that her job was really to educate him, and to educate him. He wants to know about film. He wants to get into the business, and so she had the opportunity to do that with him. Another client made a short film about her, and she was much less experienced, but this was her first short film she had made, and she was making a film about a fictionalized version of her own experience of receiving a diagnosis of having cancer. And so in her crowdfunding campaign, she unearthed an oncologist who gave her money. And in our coaching, I said to her, well, when your film is finished, I think it would be great if you partnered with the doctor and to see if you could arrange to have places for you to go and show the film and talk about the film. And that was something she was very, very interested in doing. So I have to check in with her and see how that's going. But she wanted to have the opportunity to go and show it, especially to women cancer patients, and, provide motivation and encouragement and everything, because she's a survivor. So that was a really nice example. And the other example was two very young women who were making their first short, but it was an animated short. And it very much dealt with, it's too long a story, but it really addressed an amazing issue, which is one of the filmmakers was from Iran. And right before she graduated from college in America, her guardian withdrew financial support, told her she had to come back to Iran and get married, and she refused. And he threatened to kill her. And they made a film It wasn't anything as heavy as the actual motivation behind the story, but it was, it was dealt with Iran, and it dealt with some of the ways that people get treated there. And again, they unearthed two donors who came in there at their $25,000 campaign at $2,500, and they then converted those to major donors who gave larger gifts afterwards to the film and made sure that it got made. And again, so I think in all those three examples that I gave, those major donors came in because of the cause that the film was addressing, and the major donors were interested in the cause. And one was a very documentary piece, the one about civil rights. One was a fiction about cancer, and the other one was an animated fiction. But because of the topics, people came on board. So one of the very important things to do when you're creating your crowdfunding campaigns is to see, what are the topics in the film to pull out and to really talk about that are causes that people can identify with. So even when you're making fiction films, you want to be sure that you're letting people know what the causes are, that, if that's the right way to say it, I'm not sure if that's the right way to say it. The other day, a filmmaker said to me, well, I like to make films in any topic. And she thought she was saying genre. And I said, oh, I'm going to steal that because that's really good. Topic, let's say, so my topic is cancer, let's say. I could make a comedy, I could make a thriller, I could make a horror film, I could make a musical, I could make an animated musical. The topic could be cancer, but the genre that I make could be anything. So even when you're making a fiction film, be sure to pull out those topics that are going to be of interest to people. So I would say, don't expect strangers to give. That's the first thing. Don't expect it, but prepare for it in case it does. And prepare for it by talking about the topics, the causes that are addressed in your film that people are going to identify with. Don't just think, oh, I've got a fiction, and so it doesn't have anything consequential that it's saying. One of the things I always say is that the people who come to my classes, the people who become my clients, always have a deep desire to make the world a better place. So what is it that you're looking at in your film that is going to make the film a better place? That's the cause that people are going to attach themselves to. And be sure to put that out, because I feel as though if you are going to find strangers to come in, that's going to be why, because they have attached to the cause. Yes, Roberta.
Yeah, you said don't expect strangers to give, but prepare for it. What do you mean by prepare for it?
So prepare for it by making sure that you speak about the causes that people can identify with.
That's probably why a stranger would give, because
Yes,
they connect with something
they
in
connect
your work that
with the cause, right? So let's say Joe Smith, right? Joe Smith doesn't know Roberta, and Joe Smith isn't necessarily going to give to, every film that comes along. But if Joe Smith is moved by a cause that you're addressing in your film, then you could bring Joe Smith in. So what I mean is that you can find the ways that you're going to have people be connected to a cause, even when you're making fiction. Documentary filmmakers know all about this already, right? But fiction filmmakers tend not to think about this. But if you're going to find that cancer doctor, that person who's interested in human rights in Iran or in America, then you want to spell that out in your campaign and talk about it in the video and write about it in the campaign so that people can easily find that, you
Do you
know.
know of any faith-based crowdfunding
Oh,
entities?
that's interesting. No, I don't, but that would be interesting. We'll have to look and see if such a thing exists, right? I think it's very possible. Yeah, I think it's very possible. And it doesn't matter if there isn't one. Um, we can go into business and start one. Or we can just, but remember that you want to attract your network. But I do think that's something we should look for and see if it exists. So, the last thing I want to talk about today is a rather technical thing, which is fiscal sponsorship. So, because it always sort of comes as a last thing to think about. So, fiscal sponsorship. So at the beginning, I was saying that when oh, and thank you, Lexi, for the name of the woman who started Indiegogo. What was it, Danae Ringelman? Yes, I heard her speak a couple of years ago, and that was very inspiring. But so back then, you could only give to um, you could only give to nonprofits. And in America, if you have a nonprofit, you have to get it organized under by the IRS under a 501c3. It's called. I'll put it in the chat. 501. It's the IRS designation. 501c3. It's written like that. And so a 501c3 is a nonprofit entity that does community good. So maybe it's an organization that helps the homeless, or maybe it's an organization that helps human rights, or maybe it's an organization that provides education, or maybe it's an organization that provides childcare. So 501c3 organizations provide a benefit to the community. They provide a community good. And the government says, well, if you're going to be doing this good thing for the community, which frankly we would have to pay for if you weren't doing it, you don't have to pay taxes, right? So that's basically the way I think of nonprofits. The government says you don't need to pay taxes because you're doing something for the community that we would have to do if you were not doing it. So back then, you couldn't give money to individuals. You had to give it to a 501c3, and that's changed now. Let's say I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign. I'm like, give to Joanne Butcher's film, and that money is going to come to me directly. And if I raise my $12,000 to make my film, then my income is going to go up. Let's say I do it now in 2022. My income is going to go up in 2022 by $12,000. And therefore, the IRS is going to want me to pay taxes on my extra $12,000. Now, usually this doesn't matter because I'm going to raise my money in 2022. I'm going to spend my $12,000 in 2022. So then I don't have to pay any taxes on it because I had a business income of 12,000 and I had a business expense of 12,000. So there's no taxes to pay on that. The only time it would ever be an issue would be if you raised the money in one tax year and spent it in another tax year. Then you would be charged taxes on the tax year that you raised it. So don't do that. Don't raise the money in one tax year and spend it in the next. But one way that you can do something different is you can get a fiscal sponsor. You can get a 501c3 organization to sponsor you, and you raise money through them. And instead of the check going to Joanne Butcher, the check goes to ABC charitable organization. What that means is that when people, especially we're just talking about crowdfunding campaigns today, so when somebody gives to that crowdfunding campaign, their credit report, their credit receipt says ABC 501c3 nonprofit. It doesn't say Joanne Butcher. The money goes to the nonprofit, and then they take their percentage usually, and then they give you the money. So there are benefits of going with a fiscal sponsor. For most of my clients raising $12,000, we don't usually bother with a fiscal sponsor. It doesn't really make any difference. But when you start getting gifts of $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, people want to get their tax deduction for that. So when you're going, I have a client who's a much, very big filmmaker, and we were doing a crowdfunding campaign once, and that was very, very important because we knew we were going to be getting large gifts. And once you start getting up above $500, $1,000, people want to get their tax deduction for that money. So if you are going to be doing that $75,000 campaign, that some of you are on Team 75 still, you haven't left it, you probably want to get a fiscal sponsorship. And there are lots of ways that you can do that. Anthony said he went with Film Independent. So Film Independent, I used to run a film organization called IFP Miami. We used to work with IFP LA, which is now called Film Independent. That was one of our sisters. And IFP New York, which just recently renamed themselves the Gothams. They also do fiscal sponsorship. In San Francisco, the San Francisco Film Society used to do it, and they stopped doing it. So one obvious thing to do is to get a fiscal sponsorship with a film organization. And with Film Independent or with IFP New York, the Gothams, you have to become a member to get fiscal sponsorship. And then there are all kinds of benefits to being a member. If you're a documentary filmmaker, the International Documentary Association, the IDA, does fiscal sponsorship. Again, you have to pay for membership to the IDA. You get all kinds of benefits for being a member of the IDA. So you pay the fiscal sponsor the money. They take a percentage, and you raise your money. The money goes to them, and then they send you the money. So it usually adds on some time. Lexi or Anthony, do you remember how much longer it took for the money to come to you because you had a fiscal sponsor? No.
So it was fairly quick for them to process it. And then every month they send me a little summary of the account balance. Probably within 2 weeks, and I think there's another week turnaround or something like that.
So the account balance, meaning that you're spending down the account and they're keeping those numbers. So this is one of the things that's very interesting about fiscal sponsors. Every fiscal sponsor offers a different level of service. So just to have all of your numbers clear so that for your taxes and everything, it's all absolutely clear. That's in itself a benefit, because not all filmmakers are really good about their numbers. I hate to say it, but it's true. So having that fiscal sponsor organizing the money for you so that you know exactly what's going on is very helpful. But there's a huge range of fiscal sponsors. When I was talking before about the topic of the film, the cause of the film, another way you could go, let's say we're making a movie about, who was that I was talking to the other day about this? Let's say we're making a movie about disability rights. It might be useful to go and get a fiscal sponsor that's a disability rights organization and have that partnership. So it doesn't have to be a film organization by any means. It's just that Film Independent and Anthony, good luck with the bookkeeping. It doesn't have to be a film organization. So I had a client who is making a film about traditional music in Venezuela, and she has a film fiscal sponsor, and she has a world music organization as a fiscal sponsor. And depending on who's giving money, she sends them through the film organization or through the music organization. So again, it's just about having partnerships. Maybe you partner with a really, really large nonprofit that is interested in showing your film when it's done, and they're going to market your film. And so there are all kinds of levels of partnership. Film Independent and the Gothams are really the lowest level of fiscal sponsorship, where for the most part it's a pass-through, although there is reporting, which is helpful. But there are fiscal sponsors that do all kinds of things, and you'll pay for those different services. But just so you know that they're out there and that they exist, there are fiscal sponsors all the way up to that oversee the hiring and firing of an executive director, and do all the accounting and all kinds of things. So fiscal sponsors can be a huge range, but at the minimum level, they just are a pass-through for the money, and your donor gets to be giving to a 501c3 instead of to an individual. So if you are going to be getting large grants, large donations, that's something you definitely want to do. Definitely want to do that. So I think that I have talked quite enough. Do we have questions that people would like to ask? I have a question. Who is still on team 75,000? Roberto, yes. Who else? Who else is still on team 75,000?
I really only am thinking I'm still there because I've done a feature film before. And I think that if I can use people that I know supported the first film, I'm thinking that I'm sure they would, because they're looking forward to the next thing.
Yes, right. Yes. Excellent. Well, so I think what you're saying there is that you have built a network. With your first film, you've built a network. And so now you're going to maximize that network. That's really what you're saying. Who else is still on team 75,000? Anybody who can speak?
I had actually put a question in the chat. I think you missed it, but it was, should we put a line producer in the crowdfunding budget, or should we pay for a line producer out of pocket before going to set the crowdfunding budget?
Why would you not put them in the budget? I'm not sure.
Because I've heard some people say that they should be in the budget. I've heard other people say that a line producer is always out of pocket.
Oh, I don't know who made that up. I've never heard anything like that. And that could be something to do with feature films. I really have no idea what that's about. I don't know what they're talking about. But I don't see why a line producer is different than anything else. I also would say you don't need a line producer for a short film. But that's just me.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Because budgeting is not my strong suit. Mm-hmm. I was able to do it for $1,000 budget because it was very simple because I had a very small crew. But for a $12,000 short, that's more than 2 minutes. I'm probably going to have a little bit more crew.
Hmm.
So being able to break it down would be easier.
Yeah, but
With
Alexandra, you can do it. No, it's not Alexandra. Who's speaking?
yeah, that is me.
It is you. Oh, you. It looks as if you're muted, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm. That's not. Yeah, no, you can do it. It doesn't have to be your strong suit. It's just not that complicated. Once you
Okay.
start getting to your next feature, then you can start thinking about a line producer, but you don't need, get a buddy who will sit down with you and do the boring budgeting bits. But you
Cool.
don't need
Thank
a
you.
line producer. No, not at all. Not at all. Who else? Anybody else have a question? Anybody else have a question? Okay, so when are you all going to do your crowdfunding campaigns? Roberta. Mm, mm. I want to say also for the $75,000 people, um, the same way as you can raise more money other ways, which we'll get to that next month, but the same way that you can raise more money for your films using bankable talent, you can raise more money in crowdfunding campaigns using bankable talent. So, um, you if so the way that filmmakers sometimes make $1 million multi-millions of dollars on crowdfunding campaigns is because they have bankable talent in those films. So there are examples of people making big money using crowdfunding campaigns. And frankly, if you want to raise more than $75,000, there are also professionals who run crowdfunding campaigns that you can do. I don't have anybody that I can recommend, but there are people that you can hire. So I think that when you're getting up to those bigger numbers, that would be a way to go. And often people who do that kind of work are they are only going to be interested in working with you if you have a larger network. So if you have bankable talent, or if you have, for whatever reason, you have a larger network. Um, but they are out there, and you can find them. So I'm going to wrap this up if nobody has any more questions. Um, and once again, I want to say my name is Joanne Butcher, and some of my fabulous clients are here. For those of you who are not my fabulous clients, please set up a time and talk to me about us working together. I would love to find out more about your films. I have one open slot this week if you would like to take that one. When is that one, Lexi? Friday, was it?
Wednesday,
Oh,
actually.
Wednesday. Oh, what time?
I can grab the time.
Okay. So, yeah, we have one slot this week. And then next week, I guess we have some times. But so, yeah, if you would like to talk about working with me one on one, I really specialize in helping filmmakers raise money. It's not necessarily what filmmakers want to do, but it's what filmmakers have to do. And so, given that you have to do it, you may as well get somebody to help you. And I love to help filmmakers, and we work hard, and we have fun, and we put the fun back in fundraising. And fundraising is really about building your network and building your community. That's really what it's about. So, however, we can do that. And so next month in my class, I'm going to teach about, I like to call it the 7 types of fundraising. So crowdfunding is under small donors. I say, how we used to do bake sales. We used to do raffles, we used to do all these things. And now we do crowdfunding. It's much more efficient, I have to say. But but there really are many, many other types of fundraising. But I love crowdfunding, as I said at the beginning, for a couple of reasons. One, because you can make some money and you don't have to have experience. And number two, because it brings visibility to your film and helps you start the marketing process. But next month, on March the 14th, we're gonna go through all the different types of fundraising. Sheena mentioned grants before. Anyway, there are many, many, many of those. So I would. Oh yes, and we have Clubhouse tomorrow, morning time for those of you in Pacific, and noon for Eastern. Yeah, we do a bunch of things. So tomorrow we're going to be on Clubhouse, and my room tomorrow is always moderated only by people who've already delivered a feature film. So that's really cool. And then on Thursday this week we have the Filmmaker's Life, and the Filmmaker's Life is my interview series where I interview filmmakers. And then what else? And then in March we'll have our monthly class. So we're always doing something, and every week we do that Clubhouse, and you get to come and ask questions about making your feature and getting distribution, which is another thing that I'm very, very devoted to, is making sure that my clients get their films distributed. So I am going to say good night, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and it's always fun for me to talk about filmmaking. You know, years ago, I had a dream that I could spend my life talking about filmmaking, and here I am. So and I just, oh, you know what we should also do, Lexi, could you put the link? I also have an online class called Crowdfunding 101, and this class, you do it on your own, you do it online. It should take you a couple of days, and it goes through every single step by step of how to run a crowdfunding campaign. And the class is designed for you to raise $11,000 or $12,000 in about 2 months. And again, it's not anything that you'll see out there. If you Google crowdfunding, if you read books, nobody ever does it the way I'm talking about doing it. But the Crowdfunding 101 class is designed for you to be able to just do that at-home study. It costs $197, and we've already had people raise $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 just doing that class. So that's a really helpful thing. Have you been able to find it, Lexi? Or we can't find it anymore because we hid it.
I'm almost there. I will have it in 10 seconds.
We'll get there. And we can also send it out to everybody later. But anyway, that's a class, an online class I put together. It's got several videos, different things to read, but it's designed to, you could do it over a weekend, basically. Do it over a weekend, and probably, and if you sort of just did everything, you just follow everything, you probably could start the campaign in 2 weeks, and then you would run the campaign for 30 days, and then it takes about a week for the money to come in. So the shortest time you could do it would be 2 months. But, you know, most people, anytime I ask them, most people, if I ask them if they could use $10,000, $11,000 or $12,000 in their bank account in 2 months, they say yes. So I would love for you to take advantage of that class as well. And as I said, anybody else, please give me, go on my calendar and we can talk. I'd love to meet you. There are a bunch of people here tonight I've never met before. James, Drea, Courtney, Cy, Court, and you were all very quiet. You were all very polite, which I appreciate. Anyway, it's lovely to see you all. Happy Monday and a happy March tomorrow. And we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye, Anthony.